launching them.
Hi, everybody. Happy Friday, and welcome to Guild Chat. I'm your host, Ruby. I've been having a lot of fun with our dev guests for the past 15 minutes, so I think everybody's in a fairly good mood, if a little bit ridiculous. We have Quaggins, so we're going to talk about the new Raid Wing today. I'm going to let our dev guests introduce themselves and talk about what they worked on this Raid Wing. All right, guys, go for it. Navera.
Hi, I'm Navira King. I am the writer narrative designer on this raid. And should I elaborate now, or should we go down?
You can elaborate a little bit.
Okay. I was responsible for the dialogue and the story for the Golden Path for this raid and the Key of Ahdashim, and creation of some of those characters and the lore and dev books and books and words.
Book devs.
Books and words. Words. I wrote lots of words.
I'm Peter Larkin. I was the QA embed for the raid, and I mostly focused on Kadim and the open world event, but I touched a little bit of everything.
Awesome.
I'm Tracy West. I'm an environment artist here at ArenaNet, which means I kind of helped put together the map.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys all for giving us your time today. We talked already. You elaborated a little bit. Now it's time to elaborate some more. I'm going to have you each talk a little bit about the things you worked on. Navira, can you start and just kind of, for those of you who haven't done this Raid Wing, can you kind of give us a little backstory on what's the story here, where are we at, what's going on?
Absolutely. Raid 7, Key of Ahdashim, is a part 2, actually. Part 1 was... what is the name of
Mystic
that?
Forge.
Mystic Forge. Oh, no. That's not the name of that
The
raid.
Mythrite
Gambit.
Gambit.
There we go. Oh, good gracious. Okay, so in the Mythrite Gambit,
It's been a long couple weeks.
I mean, I worked on that one too. So.
Yeah, see, that's why I was looking at you, Tracy. I was like, I know she will help me. And so in that one, we see Kadim, our bad guy, at the Mystic Forge, and we help Zomaros get rid of Kadim, who's this djinn, and Kadim falls into the Mystic Forge and comes out like this uber djinn kind of creature. And he goes back to Ahdashim, the ancient djinn city, which folks who played Guild Wars 1 will know about. But it was sort of still a little bit shrouded in mystery, like the djinn do. And so this was an opportunity for us to follow Kadim back and see what he's doing. Zomaros sends us a letter and is like, hey, Kadim is causing some problems, and I've lost touch with Ahdashim. Please go find the key and find out what's going on, help them out. And so we go to Ahdashim to figure out, that Kadim is trying to take the ancient power that Ahdashim has and how he's corrupting that. And we meet the Key of Ahdashim, who is this djinn AI who's as old as the city, and we help the key help the city and destroy Kadim, basically. So that's the raid.
It's like a flowchart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like in my brain,
yeah.
I'm like, how did the spider web work?
I want to point out that I've gone into the Mystic Forge like 100 times. I never came out an uber djinn, and I'm a little bummed about
I know,
that.
it's a thing.
But whatever, I'll make my peace
Well, you
with
might
it.
have been turned into a weird energy anomaly person at some point, though, at least.
There's
So-
that.
See, had you started it as a djinn, you would have turned into an uber djinn.
Yeah, we just have to
Oh.
throw some giant monsters in there with
I
you. at the
knew
same
I
time.
forgot to
Just
say.
throw in
Exactly.
some hydras and on your way.
No. No, thank you. So we were talking about Ahdashim. Tracy, can you talk about how did we decide where to go?
I can't
How-
talk about that.
Why Ahdashim?
So back in Path of Fire development, we're looking at what iconic places from Guild Wars 1 we could kind of bring back. Ahdashim was obviously a place that people remember very well. The problem being that, it was almost a side story at that point, involving all the djinn, and that wouldn't have quite worked with the Balthazar, side that we wanted to say. And we wanted to make sure that if we went there, we did it justice. We'd have to fill out some of the lore. So we kind of put it on the back burner. And then when I joined Raid's Fractals team, and we did the whole Mythrite Gambit, the next step was like, oh my gosh, please let us go here. Because it was one of the iconic places for me when I played Guild Wars 1. It's like, let me do this map, The downside being is I was kind of looking at, there was two different versions of Ahdashim. Either you could kind of do more of an exploratory version or you could do a mission. And the challenge mode mission only did kind of the first half of the city, which worked really nicely for, the number of bosses we were going to have. It gave us the 3 3 rooms and some interesting passages to tell lore in and stuff. But it left out the iconic room that I think every time people think about Ahdashim, it's the room with the sea of gold coins, which is unfortunately in a far corner. So I kind of made the decision early on that I was like, okay, I guess I won't go here and just take the backlash, But hopefully, I did the previous map, and hopefully, with the Mithrite Gambit, you got enough sea of flowing gold to tie you over. But it did work out very nicely in that, I looked through the original rooms, and there was that center chamber that had the huge waterfalls, and it was super open, so it was kind of clearly calling for a huge boss fight there. And then the far right side, you almost left Ahdashim, and it was kind of this earthy area with roller beetles and palm trees and everything, so that just kind of screamed Earth Djinn. And, the far left one probably doesn't read as close as it did to the GW1 version. It was still kind of some tiered waterfall kind of pretty areas, though, so that kind of lent itself nicely to when it gets destroyed. Obviously, you'd have this huge, you'd still have flowers, but then the rest of it would all be sucked up into the air. So
That's really cool.
That's such a fun thing to get to think about, especially if you played Guild Wars 1.
Yeah, I was heavily playing through like the dev. We still have like dev copies you can go through, and so I was like trying to screenshot and try to match up some of the same angles. So that was like my happy moment is when Z and everybody finally played through and was like, oh yeah, no, this feels like Ahdashim. And
Oh, that's awesome.
like when they
That
saw
feels
the
so
center
good.
room, and I was like, as long as I kind of get the vista, I can't do as big of a space necessarily with all the side rooms that the original version had, just for performance issues, if nothing else.
Oh, yeah.
But like, could I nail the the waterfalls down the side and the little buildings up above and everything? So,
well, you did. So,
yay!
congrats. Peter, real quick before we talk to you about your part, if you guys have questions, drop them in chat. We will try to answer some of them at the end. Some of the other people on our team will be pulling those questions and giving us as many as we have time for. So, Peter, you've worked on pretty much everything at some point.
Yeah.
Let's start with the open world event and just talk about what made the decision to pull that into the open world.
So if I'm understanding this is like hearsay or second-hand information, but if I'm understanding correctly, the idea was that because this raid release wasn't launching with a Living World episode, we wanted some kind of open world tie-in, and we wanted something that everybody could work on, not just raiders, because we didn't want it to just be like standalone. This release is only for raiders. So we wanted to have like a fun tie-in that everybody could kind of work on. So you can get the I think it was 2 weeks. I think I don't remember exactly how long it's running for, but yeah, you have some time to get those weapon skins in the open world, and then if you don't get those, then you can go and do the raid and get them that way.
Yeah. Through the Mystic Forge, which is fitting. So do you want to talk some about the achievements and rewards and working on those?
Yeah. My favorite one was, and this was a suggestion that I had and that a lot of other people had. I was not alone in this. But when I saw Kadim for the first time and I saw his aura, I was like, wow, that is really cool. I want that on my character. And so there was a big push, like, we got to get an infusion that like gives you that aura. So it's not an exact copy, but it's kind of like an inspired by. That got put in the game. I think it's a drop and you can buy it.
Nice. Yeah, because we can't just let you have it.
Right. Yeah. I don't have it on live.
Devs only.
Definitely. Yep.
So what were some of the other ones that you liked?
Let's see.
Just the aura, nothing else.
What else? Oh, the chair. I love the chair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's actually one of my favorite chairs. Just because it hovers and it has like the animated like cloth down below it, and I just like the style of it.
It's so
like,
Ginny.
That chair is like probably my favorite chair.
It is. It's funny. I was just looking at that yesterday with like the little rippling cloth, and it's got such a fun look to it. So yeah, I like the rewards on this one, and I kind of want them.
You're gonna hoard them.
You're gonna join the rating group for
Yeah,
Extra
we'll
Life.
have to
Ruby?
go raid and get it.
Rating group
you
for
guys are
Extra
gonna pull
Life.
me into the rating group, aren't you?
Maybe.
I don't necessarily object to this.
Excellent.
We can talk about that later. So what were some of your other favorite parts of working on this? And you guys, it's a free-for-all on who gets to talk first. I'm not going to pick on anybody.
Everybody turns, looks at me. I mean, I can talk about the tiles.
Well, yeah.
My ultimate labor of love.
Yes, please, because that was actually tiles. It's more interesting than it sounds.
Yeah. Well, so I was going back through, as I said, looking at that area, and one of the things that I remember, both from Ahdashim and Vabi, are just the patterns on the floor, and and other than that, it was just kind of like, oh, I remember going through kind of some blue hallways and some wall traps, but that was kind of that, and seeing some of the buildings up above were kind of the things that I remember about Ahdashim. And so I kind of turned to my prop artist, Jeff Weber, and was like, can we please recreate that pattern? And so sure enough, we sat there and we looked at screenshots and we recreated all the tile patterns. And then I went through and placed them all. So those are actual individual props in there.
That you placed by hand.
I placed by hand. I
Labor
mean,
of
thankfully I'd written a script to kind of help me, because I knew, how big that prop was. So I could kind of just, hit dupe and slide it over X amount. So it went faster than it sounds. But, and then the sad moment is that we discovered a bug. Namely, there's a way that I can flag props to force cull when people are playing on lower end machines. And so I'd very intentionally flagged all of those tiles because, people don't necessarily need a fancy floor if they care about, the 10 extra FPS.
Right.
But only half the tiles would respect the flag. And so Justine kind of came to my rescue and made sure that worked before it shipped. But it did lead to the interesting thing where not only did I have to hand place all the tiles, I then had to repaint the terrain to kind of match the tile pattern so that when the tiles went away, there would still be a pattern there. You just don't get the fancy trim and reflections and everything. So
I love that only half of them respected some of this floor is lovely.
Yeah. Right? It was kind of this weird patchwork. It didn't even make sense. It wasn't even like the close ones or anything. It was just like 50-50, like
I was wondering
checkerboard
about
all
that.
the way
Is it,
through.
is
Yeah.
it just like a draw distance thing? Nope.
Nope. We couldn't figure it out. It was like half the trim almost always stayed, and then it was like half the bigger squares. It was, who knows?
I feel like we can attribute this to like the vagaries of the Mystic Forge.
It's Kadeem's fault.
Well,
Yeah.
the question is,
Yes.
I have no idea how long it's been that way either, because
Oh, no.
a lot of us environment artists, we just stare at our map edit version, and so we don't always see like in client what happens or like flip between settings. We almost always just leave it on high because that's the pretty version. So who knows?
We need to have like one garbage machine just like designated for how bad can we possibly make this look.
Yeah,
It's like
Screenshot
off in a
that.
meeting room by itself, and you need to go check things.
yeah.
Oh wow. Well, how about you, Peter? What were some of your favorite things that you got to work on?
I don't remember what I answered this question before, and I don't remember. I need to prompt help.
See, the screen isn't helping you right now.
Well,
but there used to be a giant mount on that screen.
Yes.
It was
okay.
the aura, but
Let's
talk about the
we're on
gecko.
that part. Okay, good. Okay, I know this part.
Let's talk about the gecko.
So Byron was working on Challenge Mode Kadeem, and he was like trying to come up with an idea for how do we make this awesome and spectacular and unique. And so, so he came up with what we called Mega Kadeem, where he's like giant off to the side and he like picks up a player.
As you do.
So because I'm QA and because I'm a troll, I was like, when you are mounted and you turn yourself into a creature that has a scale factor on it, because all Byron did was scale up Kadeem, it applies that to the mount. So I went out to Queensdale on the Gecko, the Springer, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna turn myself into Mega Kadeem. His name is Big McLarge Huge because Byron loves that. And
Wait, is that your character? I've seen that.
that was one of his character names.
Okay.
Yeah. So I did that on the mount, and it was like, I think it was actually more than 500%. I think there was an additional multiplier in there, so it was like 30 stories tall.
I want to see it.
It's basically Godzilla.
Yeah, I got a
Show it
screenshot.
to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
It's so amazing.
I love that you got it licking its eye.
Yeah, I did that. I was I took like 10 screenshots to get it just right.
I just want audio of like little villagers like screaming
Right,
out of its
yeah.
total Godzilla moment there.
So yeah, that's when I'm breaking things, I try to have fun with it.
I was going to say, you were like, I'm QA and I'm a troll, and I'm over here going, you just said the same thing twice.
Yeah.
Is the
pretty
thing.
much.
Our job is to troll the developers, like.
Well, if you don't do it, someone
Yeah.
will.
This is true.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's just take care of that. And we didn't get video, and I'm sad about it. But can you
Oh,
talk
we
a little
didn't get
bit
the
about the
Manta.
skimmer? Like
Yeah, I
this?
was trying to do like an aliens attack type thing with a skimmer like over Divinity's Reach, kind of hovering above it. But I couldn't get the video like
Yeah.
in time and edited.
But
for
you were
this.
telling me it was like casting a shadow.
Yeah. So I don't know if it will. It depends on your settings because
Yeah.
it's so far away and shadows have a max distance. I couldn't get the shadow to happen. I know. I was disappointed. So
No, it's okay. And that wasn't like, God, Peter, why didn't you get us that video?
I know.
It's at least tell us about it because it sounded amazing.
yeah.
And I want like this Independence Day over Divinity's
Yeah,
Reach
Queen
thing
Jenna has a new problem.
with this skimmer, just like. Well, no, Vera, I had asked you about some of your favorite things about developing this.
Yes.
And Glenna.
Glenna. Oh, I love Glenna. Okay, so this actually, the raid was, I had only been here at ArenaNet for about a month when I came on to the Raids and Fractals team. And, looking back at what Glenna has been in the past, in past raids, in the beginning, she was just a vendor. She had very little like personality, and she's grown over, raid after raid. And so it was really important to me to kind of push that envelope a little bit farther, especially because, she's the familiar NPC. We always see her when we play raids. And so the opportunity to give her like a really fun arc, was a challenge that I was looking forward to. And so for Glenna, to have an arc, you need an equal conflicting personality.
Right.
And so that's what we have in the Key of Ahdashim, who is just so salty. I love the Key. Because Glenna has this very like positive, but very like intellectually earnest kind of personality. And she's there to help, but she's like, she's an Asura, and they think they know all the things. And they think they have a right to know all the things and a right to have all of that information. And she's encountering in the Key this ancient, so old as the city personality whose whole job is to safeguard the city and its secrets, because for the Jinn, secrets are, what keeps them safe. And so so when Glenna shows up and she's like, we're here to help you, Kadim is, destroying your city, like, tell us all the things and we'll tell you how to work it out. The Key is like, okay, slow your roll, little one. You don't get to know everything all the time. And
I feel like Glenna's not going to cope with that well.
no, she doesn't. She doesn't cope with it well. When at the very beginning, you see that friction from the start, even in, so Glenna and our heroes are there to help. And you think as a hero a lot of times that means that you get to choose what the help is, and you get to choose how those that you're helping, how they're going to take it and what they're going to do with it. And that's not actually reality. If you're going to help someone who's a victim or a group of people, you have to ask them sometimes what's going to be helpful. And then let them, once you provide them with help, let them, determine for themselves how to apply that help and how to move forward.
Right.
And so that was part of the friction. And you see that even from the very beginning, when the first time that everybody gets inside the gates of Ahdashim, and Glenna's like, ooh, we get to study, Jinn in their natural habitat. And she's some sort of like 19th century anthropologist looking through like a microscope. And the Key is like, all right, you're not at a zoo. We're not an exhibit. This is not a museum. We are a people, and you're guests here. And sort of that kind of starts that feeling. And the arc for both of them, when we get to the moment when, every time we come across them again, they're constantly having give and take arguments. And then the next time, right before everybody goes to fight Kadim, so Glenna, I liken Glenna to the kind of personality like, she wants to poke a bear. If you give Glenna a bear, she's going to poke the bear and then run screaming when the bear attacks. But at the same time, she's like recording the bear's like, response. You know what I mean? So she's fearless.
Glenna would chase tornadoes.
Yes, she would.
She would absolutely be a storm chaser.
Yes, that's what she is. Like, that's the kind
Oh my
of
gosh.
intellectual that she is. Like, she wants the adventure side of things, but that fearlessness also is not tempered by a sense of like, is this really how I should say this? Is this really how I should do this? Is this respectful or not? And, she's forcing the Key and the Jinn to be vulnerable in a way that is really uncomfortable and feels like an attack. And so for both of them, there's that moment where Glenna's like, this is how we're going to help you. We're going to help you get Kadeem. And the Key's like, I'll accept your help, but you have to trust me a bit as well. Like, you need to send the power to me. And Glenna has that moment where she's, how do we know that the Key's not going to go evil? And you don't get to know Glenna. You have to sort of trust in that moment. So there's this, they're allies, but neither is sure of each other. And it's not until the very end that you see a little bit more growth there.
I like the thought behind Glenna's arc. There's room for her to grow in discernment and discretion and empathy.
Yes.
But it's so true I feel like it's true of Asura in general that she's going to poke the bear.
Yes. Which is fine. There's nothing wrong with
Yeah,
poking
yeah,
the bear
yeah.
sometimes, but you have to acknowledge, like, the bear has thoughts and feelings and self-determination.
And it's going to come after you,
Exactly.
most likely.
Exactly.
And it's funny you use poke the bear as an analogy because I can't possibly be the only one thinking right now of Timey running around like, I'm going to poke it. I'm going to poke it.
Yes.
And
What's
everybody's like, Timey, stop. No, you can't.
Yeah.
So maybe part of that is an Asura thing.
I think so. But I think that Timey has more empathy in social situations than Glenna necessarily does.
Timey kind of had to.
Yeah. Exactly.
After a while, because she went through some stuff.
Exactly.
And some bad things happened.
Exactly.
And
And Glenna hasn't had that moment.
hardship in a way that Glenna hasn't really had to face as much.
Right.
Could we get Flunt in there? And I just want to.
Mess
That's
it
a
up a
fight
little
I
bit
want
more.
to see.
I mean, who knows?
So that's
Flint and Canuck for like background commentary
Oh
all
my
the
gosh.
time.
I just want. I mean, like now I just want a conversation between the Key and Canuck. Like how like disinterested and salty. Can
I like
we
really
back and
making
forth?
notes in my head for you guys.
I mean, fanfic that, y'all. Make it happen. I'll read it.
That's fantastic. I do like the thought that you put into Glenna and growing her arc, and I'm interested to see what she does.
Yeah, it was a fun space to play. And just, something that Tracy had said before about how she designed the space, it really informed the story we ended up telling and the lore that we chose for how to figure out what the Jinn society was going to be based on what you were building out.
Well, and there was some interesting things that weren't really explained very well in the original Guild Wars 1 version of the map, because I went through and there was like these weird fountains everywhere, like just pools. Like they didn't even have like elaborate, what you would expect out of a fountain. It was just like almost like scrying pools, just like sitting in almost all the rooms.
Right.
And so I was like, I kind of had to make a choice early on. I was like, am I going to put these in? And if so, they're sizable enough that do we need an explanation for it? And so we struggled for a long time figuring out how, like, okay, what is the magic of the city? Like, what is Kadeem actually trying to corrupt here? Like, what happens when a player walks into it? Which is another funny story.
I'm going to let you tell this one.
Gosh, was it Tyler? I don't even remember
I
who.
think it might have
It must have been Tyler.
It was Tyler. Totally Tyler.
And while this discussion was going on, there was a huge pool on the lead up to the Kadeem encounter where we're like, oh, players are totally going to jump in here. And I think just as a side, like, funny thing, he just made it so that, you lose, you go back to your swimsuit. And at the time, I think you turned bigger. You were like 200% bigger or something.
Peter's like, I'm going to jump in there with my cat.
Yeah, but it was kind of like this question of like what happens when a player interacts with this Jinn magic that you shouldn't really be touching, And we previously had the Mystic Forge thing where you could potentially be turned into an anomaly. So it's kind of like, okay, what do we do this time? I was pushing for everybody to be changed into chickens, but I didn't get that.
I feel like the semi-naked dance party is It's
Yeah.
close to chickens, but like maybe not quite.
I'm sorry, did we not have enough chicken models to do that?
Oh, poor
Or
Chelsea's over there. Like, you could have used all of my chickens.
Just like, wait a minute.
She has a whole
Of
pile
all
of
the
like.
creatures we could turn somebody into.
Poor Chelsea has so many different variants of chickens and hyenas that she so desperately wants to get in. Like, we finally gave her the chicken tonic, I think. So that
Yeah,
maybe
for those of you who don't know, we have. Does anybody know offhand how many chicken models we have in the game?
Oh, I don't know.
No,
I don't know. There's a lot.
I don't even think they all made it into the tonic because I don't think we had the gold chicken in there, and she was.
Oh, that's right. There was the gold chicken. I don't.
Yeah.
There's a lot of very realistic chicken models in there because Chelsea loves chickens.
Because reasons.
Because
and she just kept making. And now there's like all these different chicken models in the game. So
I tried, Chelsea. I tried.
So chicken
But-
tonic.
Well, there's a bunch of other little hidden things in there too, in
Yeah.
addition to the pools.
For
if we
example-
if we wanted to segue.
I mean,
We could please.
Well, there's two things. One that ties back into GW1 lore again, which was back when you originally got there, you followed Goran with his little egg. Well, at the time he didn't know it was an egg; it was just a rock, and it hatched into shiny. And we knew that we had to address it in some way because players were going to ask.
Right.
But obviously, that wasn't going to be one of the encounters, so it kind of fell to like, okay, how could we
How do we, like,
make
plant?
a reference? So there is a reference in there. Wooden Potatoes just like went right past it in this playthrough, and I was
Turn
just
around,
like, turn around. Like both of us were like, no.
it's right there. It's right there.
right
We
there.
promise it's there.
Yeah, so there was a few like lore nuggets that
Yeah.
we kind of like snuck in, and I have a tradition of putting in quail in all the maps that I work on. So there is a quail hidden in both the Mithrite Gambit and in this map.
They're
Do you know
all
if anybody's found it?
It's not really that hidden because thankfully there's areas where it's like it seemed reasonable to have a quail there, so I didn't feel too guilty about it this time.
plopping it in.
Yeah, well, the Mithrite Gambit was a bit more like, where am I gonna stick? But, you know,
Yeah.
'cause I like to be reasonable about them. Not all the maps I've done have them because it just felt super weird to have a quail sitting
Yeah.
there.
Just put like one random Jin in the corner stroking his pet quail.
I mean, speaking of, there are random Jinn hidden because Jinn can have different forms, and
Oh yeah.
so they're hiding from Kadim, y'all. Look for them, and you
Yeah.
can have conversations with them. And there's like, you just got to reach out.
Investigate
Find
the.
them. Because the thing is that once Kadim is defeated, they all come out of hiding. So if you wait until the end of the raid, when you finished it, you won't find them because they'll just be hanging out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But
So
before that, they're
before
hiding.
that,
Can we backtrack just a second? And can you talk a little bit about Shiny?
I don't know how much I can say about Shiny, really. I mean, it was just a salt spray dragon originally, and I mean, I could talk about the story.
Yes, it's for people who don't know.
Oh, for people who don't
Yeah.
know, it was kind of almost a side quest in GW1. You just had to have been talking to Goran, who was just a character, just kind of chilling in one of the cities. I think he might have been protecting one of the princes or something. He was kind of like hired help, from what I vaguely remember.
He wasn't
And
very active. Hired help.
yeah, he kind of had his own agenda, and he wasn't too intelligent. That's putting it nicely. And yeah, I don't see. Now you asked me this question, I didn't brush up on why he was moving Shiny in particular. But no, he just towed around this thing that he thought was a rock this whole time, and he gets into Ahdashim, and then it hatches into this like salt spray dragon who basically just kind of refers to him as mommy. Like he just takes
just imprints on them.
yeah, he
like
just
a
takes
baby
the
duckling.
role as like, well, I guess this is my life now. Like this is my baby, and I'm just gonna stay in the city, like raising.
He
this.
was waiting for his purpose.
Yeah, he was waiting for his purpose, and instead of becoming kind of hired help thug the rest of his life, he became mommy to a dragon. So
As one does.
as one does.
I've heard this somewhere.
And then and that's kind of where it left off. We kind of left Goran just chilling in Ahdashim with his baby dragon, and so kind of there was this question of what happens, and we don't want to spoiler the little thing you can find in Ahdashim, but
there is a little thing
we
you
do
can find
reference
in
it.
Ahdashim.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's one more thing that I wanted to talk about, and that was we've talked about some of the funnier moments, and you had one that you haven't mentioned yet.
Oh yeah, that's true. So we internally playtest a lot of these raids, and we fully acknowledge we're not Snow Crow's level. Just
Really,
kindly.
very few people are.
Not.
But earlier on, we were working on the Earth Gin, and Ben Arnold was coming up with all these crazy elaborate patterns for that. I think we cut like half of the designs because it just got ridiculous, like the transitions. But it used to be that when you fell into the quicksand, it would always kill you, like even on normal mode. And I'd gone off to work on a different map kind of towards the end of development, I think, when you came in. And so I never realized that they changed that to only be challenge mode. And so, I was watching on release, like Mighty Teapot and Win Potatoes and everything were doing their playthroughs. And then realized that they were almost using it to kind of like dodge mechanics, and they're like, "Oh yeah, no, just like jump through this," and like complaining about like getting back up on the pillars.
Totally predicted that one, by the way. That people would jump in the quicksand to avoid the attack.
Yeah. And so I was
Totally
seeing
called
that, I was just like internally like dying laughing because I knew that they were like training themselves into really bad habits. And so I'm pretty sure people thought I was kind of crazy sitting at my desk just like cackling, like when they hit the challenge mode and just realized that insta death. And like what it meant, like if you didn't kind of memorize the patterns and where like the holes would be, that then you just fall into insta death. Because that was my experience of that map for like months. Was just the pillars would fully destroy everything, and there was just these spots that would just.
My favorite part of the videos that I watched was, I don't remember who it was. I wanted to give credit, but I don't remember who it was. I think it was her first pull on Adina, and she destroyed all 5 of the pillars. And it was her first time doing challenge mode, and they all ran right into the hole. All of them. The entire raid, right down the hole, and they all died.
Well, at least they died together.
Yeah, one big happy.
That's half the fun of raiding.
Exactly.
Well, and that's what
It's
usually happened
Yeah.
too, is that everybody would run behind the same pillar too.
Right?
And like, oh, we're all safe now.
Yeah.
Spread out, guys.
I
Spread
like
out.
when they finally discovered too that I kind of put like a bit of a mossy indicator on like the center ones for like various things, for like how close you need to be or how far away you need to be for some of like the raising center thing. Subtle, but
there.
I tried to help. I tried.
We're going to take some questions from chat here in just a minute, but while we're waiting for the questions to pop up, I realized that you've probably just accidentally trained a lot of our player base to be like, look for the moss.
Look for the moss.
It means something.
It means something.
I mean, some of them were admittedly calling it out already, so I feel like it's been out there. But
All right.
now you know in a more formal way.
Now you have to do a moss and a quail.
Yeah, you have to do the quail hunt
Everything.
now, again.
Okay. Today is it's not.
I was like, is it?
No, it's next month.
And it went away.
There you go. It's in 1 month and 3 days.
Okay,
So
well, the countdown has
FYLs,
begun. The countdown has begun.
It's not my birthday. Like Facebook would have told you guys.
I know. I was just thinking that. I was like, Facebook didn't alert me.
I was like, it hasn't been the lunch email yet. I
Yeah.
don't know until.
That's right. The lunch email hasn't come, so you don't know whose birthday it is.
Right.
Check
Yeah.
Facebook. You've got
Okay.
this.
Okay.
I was just looking at that going, what?
Okay, I kind of love this one.
Well, you just go on and talk about Sabir.
Yeah, so I love how they adore Sabir. So, yes, what inspired me on Sabir's personality? Should I reread these questions?
Yes.
Okay.
So they can't check. They can't see these. Only we can.
Only we can. Okay. So Mad Queen Thorn wants to know, for narrative, did anything inspire you on Sabir's personality? Where did it come from? I fell in love with this Jin pretty quickly. I adore him and how he bickers with his elemental. So this is definitely a case where environment and game mechanics really fed into Sabir's personality. When you get into that platform, he's constantly just running away. He does not want to fight you. He's like, okay, path of least resistance. Like, I'm going with Kadim because, well, Kadim's already killed 2 cardinals. Probably best to go that way. And it's that sort of flighty. Like, I totally was like, every pun for air is what Sabir is going to be. And actually, that's sort of how I was thinking about all the cardinals. Here's a little secret. I was like Wikipediaing like crazy, like, okay, so if you're like pagan and you're thinking about the elements, like what does earth represent to you and what does air represent? And then like I fed that back into their personalities. So air being, fluctuating with the environment and with what's going on, seeing which way the wind blows and all of that. That's where Sabir's personality really comes from. And it's not that he's evil. He does feel a need to protect his people, but like he's convinced himself that this is the way that things are going. I don't want to fight. That's the way I'm going to go. That's the way I'm going to
protect
take
him
us.
better by staying around.
Exactly. So very different than Adina, who's like smash, like she's very militant. But Sabir is
I
like,
love her.
do you?
Yeah.
I know. I feel like people are picking sides.
Yeah.
They either love Adina
yeah.
or they love Sabir, or they're like me and they're like that key.
Yeah.
So
You ever hear with Glenna going,
yeah, exactly.
okay.
I feel like this is another one for.
Yeah,
Oh.
that might be you
Yeah.
too.
Are they? Perhaps. Okay, so Daydreaming D asks, in the Mythrite Gambit, there's that great story of the four Jinn. Are Adina and Sabir the earth and air Jinn from the story? So
You're creating canon right now.
I know. Props to Alex. I think that there is something, Alex Kane was the writer on Mythrite Gambit. And
Alex is amazing.
Alex is the best. And did those book defs. Also did the very first pass on an outline for this raid. So where we were picking up from Ahdashim. I would say that maybe. My answer is maybe. The reason that my answer is maybe is that what we find out by spending some time in Ahdashim is that they have these four cardinals who, for each of the elements, is the most powerful element who's hooked in, the most powerful Jinn who's hooked into the ley line. The ley line requires the four cardinals and the key to stabilize it, and they sort of met out this power to their, Jinn of their type. But they also have a system where you're not a cardinal for life. There is some turnover there, and that's one of the reasons, like when Kadim is like, you passed me over for lesser Jinn, he's salty because he didn't get to be a cardinal. So there's the possibility that like that might have been them from back in the day. Zamaros was also up as a possible cardinal, but he's not salty about it. They have power potential, but doesn't necessarily mean that the key is going to judge them to be the best, cardinal. So that's the lore I'm going to give you.
Well, Zamaros, I feel like Zamaros found his passion in life.
Yes,
And
and he's perfect over there.
and it's catching the crap that you throw into those boards.
He's great at that, and he has such I really like Zamaros.
I do too.
I'm glad we
I
got
do
a
too.
little bit of him in
I
here.
very much do. All right, Tracy, is that
What
one for
happened
you?
to Shiny?
What happened to Shiny?
Are you going to spoil this?
No, I'm not.
That is
we
your
will
answer.
explain. Like it hints at what happened to Goran. I don't think we ever really explicitly said what happened to Shiny, and that was intentional.
I think I can say that the fact that the weapon skins are called shiny has nothing to do with it. That was an oversight. We didn't think about that until the very end. I was like, wait a minute, these are called shiny weapon. No, that has to do with Skrit. That's completely
Yeah.
a Skrit thing.
Yeah.
I thought that sentence was going in a very different
We
direction.
did not turn shiny into weapons, I promise.
Oh no, the darker route.
Let's talk about that.
We dismantled
Yeah.
Shiny, and now it's
I mean,
That's
the
horrifying.
the brutal answer is if we were to include Shiny, that would have been a whole new model to get the Salt Spray Dragon looking
Yikes.
right. And so, when we're already talking about, usually we have the bosses get their own models and everything.
Yeah.
From the game standpoint, like that's the brutal honest thing is
Yeah.
if we reference Shiny, it probably would have still had to have been, text, which wouldn't have been super satisfying anyway.
Water a little bit, especially
Yeah,
because
and
we're
it would have been a
focused on the
side
Jinn.
story. People would have probably wanted Shiny to actually play a role in the encounters, which was never intended. So we kind of just want to leave it as a tantalizing, like, you imagine what happened
Yeah.
to Shiny.
Yeah.
Shiny's still out there. Like, we didn't say that, it got destroyed when Kaneem, came through or anything. Maybe Shiny escaped. maybe you'll meet
Maybe.
maybe you'll meet Shiny again. Who knows?
But shiny is definitely not weapons.
Right.
No.
Shiny did definitely not get turned into weapons.
I had,
Zomeros and the script were not that cool.
Yeah, exactly.
I had such an emotional roller coaster with that because I didn't put two and two together. I was just like, shiny's great, yes. And then you started saying that, and I thought you were
Yeah.
going to say that yes, shiny is
No,
weapons.
no.
And I was
Shiny
like,
is
what?
weapons.
No,
Shiny
oh,
is
I didn't think of any of this.
That's like the worst, like Soylent Green.
Yeah.
Shiny
That's
weapons
just
are
too dark.
shiny.
It's too dark.
It's
Oh, man.
horrifying.
Do you know there's a part of me that's like, ooh, that could have been kind of cool if we'd gone that way, but that's the like creepy
in
right
a
now.
dark and creepy way.
I know.
That's okay. Like that
Shouldn't do
creepy
that.
streak is what makes y'all good. So.
Yeah, but that storyline was too lighthearted to end there.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that just would have been.
Golly.
Yeah,
That,
absolutely.
you know, in and amongst all the princes like hiding out in the gin, like trying to beat you up for invading, stealing their treasures, and then there was just like this happy little like.
Happy little dragon.
Yeah.
Oh no. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for your time. I appreciate it, and thank you all for hanging out with us today. And I will let you all get back to work because, like Tracy was saying, time and resources are not unlimited. So thank you all for your time. Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
Key of Ahdashim
Thank you.
because it is super fun.
Yay.
All right. We will see you guys next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.